This is the band Funeral Mess, made of Russian punk refugees playing at a venue run by Russian punk refugees in Tbilisi, Georgia. This is the story about those Russian punks, their displacement, and their effort to foster community in a foreign land. In order to understand how they came to be, we have to dig first into the history of Russia and Georgia. Georgia is a mountainous country with a rich history located in the Caucasus, that is, south of Russia, north of Turkey, and bordering the Black Sea. With a population of just 3.7 million, it houses one of the oldest contiguous cultures in the world. After years of being a protectorate of the Russian Empire, it was incorporated into the Soviet Union in 1921.
Georgia is an interesting case because during the Soviet Union it had what some historians would call privileged position. It was one of the wealthiest republics. It had outsized influence because of the number of Georgians who were in very high positions during the creation of and throughout the history of the Soviet Union. And in the post-Soviet period, a very, I would say radical anti-Soviet memory politics took hold in the nation-building process, especially after 2003, when there was the Rose Revolution in Georgia. And so what this ended up doing was creating a tension between, say, what the historiography, what the archives, and what normal people think about or know about the Soviet experience in Georgia versus what the dominant memory political regime was trying to create in the post-Soviet period.
We also kind of lived very privileged because of what Stalin did. So, my family personally have nothing but positives to say about the Soviet Union.
You can see that, like, Georgia already has a particularly important place in the Soviet structure. And Stalin's rise to power will also, encourage that. Stalin is from Georgia. He's got a circle around him, and he's got what we could call clients or comrades in Georgia who directly speak directly with him. Another famous Georgian, Lavrentiy Beria, is from Georgia and will rise through the ranks of the party. So Ordzhonikidze will have all Soviet positions, the highest ranks of the government. And so this is going to create a situation where there are very powerful Georgians in very high positions. Georgia had become one of the most economically wealthy regions of the Soviet Union. There's a number of reasons that's the case. Part of it has to do with access to luxury goods. Part of it and the way that Georgians were able to take advantage of the economic connections with the rest of the Soviet Union, sort of to facilitate the distribution of certain luxury goods, wine, tropical fruits, mineral water, other things. In the Soviet project of facilitating this idea of druzhba narodov, the friendship of the peoples, where the Soviet person was not a Russian or an Uzbek, but was the combination of all of these people into one multinational Soviet person.
New post-Soviet Georgia had to reconfigure its place and position in the world, and whether it could find identity either in cooperation with Russia, who is facing its own socio-economic problems, or with the West, which promised opportunity and wealth.
Georgia had a unique situation when the Soviet Union collapsed, and that unique situation is this. It saw the harshest decline of living standards and income of anywhere in the Soviet Union.
So first the conditions changed. So there was a collapse, and so because of the collapse, de facto things changed, right? So the privileges and perks they had before were unable to be met because the economic part wasn't there to give them those privileges. And then it changed by law in early 2000s, where Saakashvili, the president, then completely did away with the union, with the labor code, and only whatever you agreed with your employer, that was by law, like that was a contract. And so, and all the social benefits were, taken away officially. And then progressive taxation was outlawed by the Constitution, and every kind of thing we can think of that's social rights were taken away. And also at the same time, communism became criminalized. Like there were laws against communism.
Georgia's attempt to align with the West came at the cost of increased neoliberalization and a reimagining of its past relationship with Russia. Things reached a fever pitch in 2008 when Russia came to the aid of separatist regions Abkhazia and South Ossetia by invading Georgia.
I was 6 years old in 2008, and the trauma of that war still resonates with me, and a lot of people as well. During the Independence Day parade we had this year, when a bunch of planes flew over the city, fighter jets, the sound put a lot of my friends on edge, and a lot of friends and relatives and family members had some sort of panic, and I know multiple people who had panic attacks from that. I myself, as soon as I heard the about 3-4 seconds before I saw them, as soon as I heard the sounds, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to get blown up. The first thought in my mind was, well, I'm going to die. And then when I realized it's Independence Day and that planes were flying our colors, I calmed down, but it was still shocking that the first thing I thought of was, I'm going to die.
There are tensions with Russia between Georgia and Russia at this time that start happening, because Georgia is a very small country, and it can be kind of pushed around by anybody, and whether that's like the U.S. lifts a finger or Russia lifts a finger, and it can really like augment and shape the dynamics domestically. There was Russia deported Georgian citizens in 2006. There was embargoes on wine. There was a number of instances where disagreements between Saakashvili and Putin, or the Georgian and Russian governments, led to tension.
Despite this Soviet occupation stuff and the fact that in war of Abkhazia there was Russia involved too much, there was not such a big hatred against Russia, even not Russians. Against Russians, it only started maybe just now after the Ukrainian war. But still, it's not really common in our society, but still it grew up too much after war started in Ukraine. But before, there was not really huge hatred against Russians, against Russia itself, like a country, like institution. It only started maybe in 2008 when August War happened after this. But still, I can say there was very, 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 very few cases when somebody was badly abused because of his Russian.
The war with Georgia never officially ended, but has become a frozen conflict. In the meantime, Russia began a special military operation with Ukraine in February 2022. By September of 2022, Putin announced a partial mobilization to recruit soldiers to join the war, and many in Russia's DIY punk scene fled rather than face the possibility of conscription. Due to relatively relaxed visa rules, many of them fled to Georgia.
На освобожденных территориях считаю необходимым поддержать предложение Министерства обороны и Генерального штаба.
По данным правозащитных организаций, задержано до 1400 человек, большинство из них в Санкт-Петербурге и в Москве. Некоторым задержанным сразу же вручили повестки. Известно как минимум об одном уголовном деле о нападении на полицейского. Это первые столь массовые антивоенные протесты в России за несколько месяцев.
The influx of Russian immigrants, along with Georgia's increasing appeal to Western tourists and capital, has had major impacts on the economy of the country, polarizing many Georgians between those who feel the effects of rising prices and those who see the influx of capital as new opportunity.
Ну да, тут на самом деле сложная история взаимоотношений между Грузией и Россией. То есть это не сейчас началось, вот, не там, с начала войны в Украине, а это ну, гораздо раньше. Вот. И даже не в 2008, а вот сразу после распада Советского Союза. И, ну, понятно, что участие ну, людей местных есть, скажем так, определенные вопросы, в том числе к людям, да, которые приезжают из России. Вот, ну, они по-разному их могут выражать. Некоторые, например, там как раз пытаются как бы, ну, выйти на какой-то диалог, и, как правило, это все заканчивается тем, что ну, ты говоришь с человеком, и никаких, ну, вопросов там после этого там не остается. Вот. Ну, бывает, что, конечно, встречаются люди, которые проявляют какую-то там агрессию, но это скорее какие-то, ну, не знаю, по собственному опыту могу сказать, что это какие-то единичные случаи. Ну, нету такого ощущения, что здесь прям какая-то вот напряженная, сильная атмосфера в этом плане. Ну, вот эти надписи были здесь и раньше, как бы, и, может быть, их стало больше, не знаю. Ну, вот. Но я уверен, что, по крайней мере, из тех людей, которые к нам ходят, эти надписи не рисуют. Вот. И к нам конкретно, и вообще в целом к людям, ну, из России, которые не поддерживают войну, относятся, ну, положительно.
I want to make a simple argument about punk's ability to mobilize community and create belonging in adverse situations. These communities and senses of belonging are important ways to cultivate transnational solidarity and empathy that transcend geopolitical tensions and suspicions.
Когда началась война, я принял решение покинуть Россию, но некоторым причинам я не смог это сразу сделать, потому что все мои группы, в которых я играл, я писал антивоенные песни. И для меня это было важно не принимать эту агрессию, которую российское государство сделало ну, в сторону Украины. Ту войну, которую она разыграла, но я как-то, не знаю, у меня осталась в России семья, моя бывшая жена, дочка, и мне было тяжело сделать шаг с отъездом. Но когда началась мобилизация, я понял, что больше не могу находиться в этой стране, и уехал. Хотя я не попадал ни под мобилизацию, ни по здоровью, ни по возрасту уже. Но это было моим осознанным решением, что я не могу больше находиться в этой стране и как бы поддерживать это государство, это правительство.
When the war with Ukraine started, many Russian punks either decided to stay abroad or waited to see how things developed.
Ну, да. Если более подробно, то просто так получилось, что мы здесь оказались, ну, часть из нас оказалась еще до войны. Ну, кто-то там за несколько дней, кто-то за один день, вот как мы, например, с Кириллом. И, ну, на следующий день, когда мы почитали новости с утра, мы решили, что, наверное, не имеет смысла возвращаться сейчас в Россию.
The war in Ukraine was something that hit me deeply personal because, like, it's for. I mean, every person has their story, and my story is when I was like 20 to 25, I had a girlfriend in Ukraine. I was like living there like half time, so I've been to all those places. It's to me, it's very close to my heart still. I miss those places a lot. And when I was hitchhiking through there, through Ukraine, and talking to Ukrainian people and everything, like felt home there. It felt really peaceful. Like you see those fields and those just little villages and stuff. Like you would never imagine it going through war, and now it's it's been going on in some of the places I've been to. It's been going on for 8 years. So yeah, it's been a long time for me that I kind of lived with that, but now there was no way to be at peace in Russia. I'm still not at peace, but in Russia it was just impossible. I was going through sort of nervous breakdown because also after mobilization they basically opened mobilization for checkpoint something building where they would gather people and give them the uniforms and send them wherever to train. So it's like people in green uniforms outside on the streets every day, more and more of them. They give you the weird look. They're like, hey, why not? Aren't you with us? Or something like that. So
none of my friends or people I know went there, but a lot of people got those, how you call it, letters to the army. Even yen, which was insane. My friend, who is like 45 or more, and he's wearing glasses for many years. I mean, those parameters are not fitting the requirements as far as we know, as well as many others. So we just witnessed that many people were receiving those stupid letters just against all rules. And one of our friends who is already here too, he even received it twice.
Ну, тут как бы сложно сказать, потому что в целом практически все, кто сейчас находится на территории России, они подвержены каким-либо образом под то, что их могут мобилизовать. То есть даже если ты условно официально не являешься подлежащим призыву, ну, просто по воле какой-то случайности тебя, соответственно, могут призвать участвовать во всем этом деле. Поэтому, мне кажется, каждый практически подвержен этому риску. Поэтому, конечно, да, мне конкретно не хотелось бы рисковать вот этим.
I was the most nervous I've ever been. Some of the most nervous I've ever been in my life was mobilization days, the first days, where there was just endless stream of people going through Verkhnyi Lars, the checkpoint, like the border point from Russia. It's basically one road from Russia right now. Also, there was no plane. Now they have a plane. So that was the only way you could get into Germany straight from Russia. So yeah, those very scary pictures of people jammed in these tunnels in the mountains. And I understood very quickly that if I give in to my nervousness, I just have to leave everything behind. Like just leave with very little money and nothing really to do, because my studio is my everything. Back in home, that was my way of life, so I had to move it too.
It was horrible because those days a crowd of people were going here and everything was closed, and maybe you know all these things from the news and how horrible it was at those times for all these people. There were no water, no nothing. People had to just stand or sleep on the road, and I was just crossing through all of them like that, walking like a lot of kilometers at night, and just then I got some car. And finally, at night, I reached Vladikavkaz, and then I got my flight to St. P. So it was a crazy trip.
It was like very, very early 2000s when I started. And at this time, really, in Georgia, it was not so developed, like punk scene or metal scene, like separately, or hard rock or blues rock. Like everything was like mixed together. The main, how to say, ideology, I can say, it was like live music and pop music, who was, the singers was singing like on a phonogram, even with plus phonogram, like with recorded vocals. And the main thing was that we were playing live and singing live, and really doesn't matter. It was metal, punk, alternative, blues rock, heavy metal, like hard rock. Like everybody was together, and also because this is a small town, everybody knew each other, and like rock society also was small, maybe maximum 500 people, and yeah, everybody was hanging out together.
Just being able to go to a place and find myself with a bunch of people I don't know, have nothing in common with, and somehow what's called not feel excluded or as an outcast, but feel like I belong there just as much as the random Johnny standing next to me.
Into Russian, not at all. Even there were not many, but there were some punk rock bands who were singing in Russian. Even my band has a Russian name, but mostly we sang in Georgian. We have only 2 songs which is in Russian. And nobody really cared about language, like it's Russian or Georgian. Even today, when we play Russian songs, mostly all audience is singing with us in Russian.
Well, right now we're on the old Hyperdrome, which basically for a while used to be the main meeting spot for the locals, you know, not just local punks, but local metalheads, and basically everyone involved in the local music scenes, including even at the time before it got really popular, rave and other alternative musical subcultures. But then, of course, it was the massive rave and techno music explosion of the 2010s, which basically had them shoot off into their own little bubble where they don't interact with us much anymore. There would be a bunch of people. There would be bonfires. There would be alcohol, a lot of alcohol, and you know, just basically people will get drunk and hang out.
We're the band Kajichamia, and today we're here to tell you all: fuck war, fuck imperialism, fuck fascism, fuck this war. Is anyone butchered it?
Nevachshemis, nedashevets.
Nevachshemis, nedashevets.
Drunk people fight for everything, every reason under the sun at this point, as far as I knew. There used to be some legitimate grievances, but then there also used to be drunk old people being angry that younger people didn't like their music, and you know, sometimes they would get violent, but usually it was all resolved by the end of the night.
You ever play shows?
We have, yeah, multiple times. There used to be shows here, but last time there was a show here was in 2021, which ended with a Nazi attack on this place.
In what way? Like what happened?
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, no, I was at my grandmother's funeral, but yeah, so Was? Tak ovo bude. Speak of the devil, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, last time they hosted a show here, which not showed up about 30-40 people, attacked the concert goers. Somebody pulled out a gun, pneumatic one though, and shot 3 musicians. Then the cops showed up, nothing really came of it.
Ну, я ходил на один концерт весной, на один концерт, и на концерте прям очень много было нацистов, прямо зиговали, зикали, прямо вокруг меня мы стоим, я друг под друга, мы оба азиаты, и прям вообще было неуютно, пришлось уйти. На улице было еще хуже. Нет, я переехал до мобилизации. Я уехал из России после начала войны. Я жил в Казахстане, в Кыргызстане, и потом я переехал сюда на недолгое время, я думаю. Потом началась мобилизация, и как-то так получилось, что я до сих пор здесь. И, в принципе, мне все здесь нравится, поэтому я
Ну, лично я отношусь к этому, в принципе, с пониманием, вот, потому что, ну, как бы люди в основном это пишут, основываясь на какой-то политической обстановке, вот, и, ну, в целом, так как Россия, не знаю, это уже экстремистские слова или нет, так как Россия является государством-агрессором, вот, и не только по отношению к Украине, ну, я лично отношусь к этому спокойно, и, ну, если мне кто-то говорит там, об этом, то я всегда стараюсь как бы обсудить, понять, выслушать точку зрения и, может, как-то попытаться сказать и ну, донести какую-то мысль, что, ну, естественно, не каждый русский, не каждый россиянин, ну, в общем, не каждый приезжий из России, соответственно, является каким-то плохим человеком, и не нужно делить людей в таком случае вот, на национальности.
If you even see the graffitis or if you see a lot of the anti-Russian sentiments, it happens to be the people who live in these areas who also tend to be a little bit more wealthy, than workers. I mean, it's hard to say Georgia. It's very unequal society. So even like what we consider like wealthy may not be wealthy at all to like an American. But comparatively, people are so poor that they may actually look like they have more money. So, like my family complains about Russians, and yet they have a restaurant, and they have Russians that go there and eat there and keep it sustained. But that's like a typical story.
It wasn't easy for people to leave their home and establish themselves in a new place. Leaving family and friends in Russia, adjustment to a country is a continuous process of dealing with a new language and new culture that is itself dealing with questions of belonging. Punk, as a transnational subculture, acts like a network that draws like-minded people together, and Russian punks moving to Tbilisi are a prime example. But the goal is not to overpower the local scene, but rather to integrate and to strengthen it.
Ну, мне кажется, процесс ничем не отличается от того, чтобы арендовать место в какой-либо другой стране. Ну, по крайней мере, я не могу сказать, что здесь есть какие-то особенности, как бы мы довольно долго искали подходящее помещение, вот, и, в целом мы считаем, что мы его нашли, вот, несмотря на то, что мы как бы находимся вот в жилом, во дворе жилых домов мы стараемся находить всегда общий язык с соседями, вот, как бы понимать, что мы здесь находимся не одни, и как-то создавать комфортную среду не только для себя, но и для окружающих нас людей, вот, для того, чтобы, ну, оставлять какой-то положительный отпечаток вот, от своего здесь присутствия. Вот, поэтому, собственно, мне кажется, конечно, были определенные сложности именно с поиском, вот, потому что мы изначально хотели открыть не просто клуб, например, где мы можем проводить концерты, а чтобы это было пространство, где можно было проводить мероприятия абсолютно разных форматов, и поэтому данное место очень хорошо под этот формат подошло, потому что у нас на разных этажах расположены разные некие активности, вот бар, там кухня, как я уже говорил, в подвале мы проводим концерты, вот на первом этаже тоже музыка, вот, и в целом все.
Я вокалист, мне ничего не надо было покупать. Ваня привез гитару. Наш барабанщик уехал без всего. То есть мы его нашли, он просто арендует здесь в репетиционной точке тарелки и и остальной став для барабанщиков. Басист тоже, у него не было своей гитары, он здесь просил. В общем-то, это такое как бы пан-комьюнити. И в этом пан-комьюнити очень много знакомых людей, которые могут одолжить инструменты для того, чтобы нам снова играть.
Ну и да, получается, что когда мы открыли это место, в тот момент практически не было никаких альтернатив для местных групп, где играть. То есть, как опять-таки нам рассказывали местные ребята, что из-за пандемии, все закрылось, и то есть и до пандемии не то, чтобы было много таких мест, но после пандемии их практически совсем не осталось. И вот только они начали как бы какие-то там появляться, вот, и получается, что мы предоставили вот площадку, где могли бы играть группы, которых здесь оказалось на самом деле не так уж и мало, как мы думали изначально, вот, и сейчас их становится, заметно больше. Возможно, отчасти как бы мы этому поспособствовали, хочется в это верить. Но и мест становится больше, на самом деле сейчас уже нет проблемы с тем, чтобы где-то выступить, то есть тут открылось довольно много и концертных площадок, и всяких там клубов и так далее. Так что все, в принципе, развивается в этом направлении. И мы, наверное, все-таки какую-то свою нишу тоже заняли в этом во всем.
When a lot of Russians came to Georgia, mostly those people are like people who are in opposition of Putin, some activists, musicians, culture, working people like writers, journalists, and so on. And also many punk rock musicians came, not only musicians, but also punk rock people from punk rock scene. The audience in Georgian punk concerts grew, like maybe for 20-30%. Thing is that they have a huge economic effect on Georgia, and what is happening now, I would say it's pure gentrification. First of all, if you look, most of Russians who came to Georgia, what I see from what I saw, there are no, how to say correctly, poor people. Mostly people who have some money, because at least to come to Georgia you need money for the road, and to rent a house you need money, and to live here you need the money, because they are not refugees and nobody will give them a shelter, so they have to rent themselves. Yeah. What happens that many Georgian house owners really pushed out Georgians who was renting their house because Russians were paying more, and many Georgians can't afford now a home to rent in Tbilisi, especially students or some people who come to work who live in other regions of Georgia. And price for house renting raised very much. Price for products raised very much. Of course, it is because of war also, because main suppliers was Russia and Ukraine to Georgian market. Yes, usual Russian GDP is more higher than Georgian. Like we can say that Russians are more, how to say, rich than random Georgian. Yeah, house rent raised up for 100%. For example, I would say it was 100 lari, now it's 200 lari. It was 2,000 lari, now it's 2,000 lari. It's like 700 USD. When all this will be over, and one day this will be over, yes, nothing lasts forever, and all this Russian will go somewhere, maybe back home, and Georgian businessmen who will be used to these high prices, they will be left without client. Will not be possible to pay such a big rent.
And while that privatization process and chaos is happening in Russia, also there's a war in Chechnya, and there are all kinds of conflicts going on, mafia wars. Russia no longer can function as like a center of gravity economically or politically in Georgia. It doesn't make sense, right? And so, as others have put it too, like it no longer offers Georgia anything. What does Russia offer Georgia? Well, it's a big power. It's on its border. We should have good relations with it. I mean, this is Shevardnadze's position, of course. But it's not gonna help us build our military, or it's not gonna help us economically develop really. So we need to do something else.
A lot of workers we represent don't get to live in the city center. The city center has already been, for a while, being transformed into Airbnbs because of just the nature of tourism. Tourism as being really the only industry that they've been developing for years now, which we have always been against. So the Airbnbs and the just sort of push towards making every space that's center commercial has already been going on for a long time. The influx of Russians just sort of sped up the process that was already happening because the course has been taken towards. So a lot of the workers don't live in the city center. Not only don't live there, I just did like a small internal study, like research, like questionnaire survey, and they said like 60%, I think, had not been to the center the last month. So they really are not being subjected to the same level as more of the middle class, or a few, maybe other also people have kept their homes in the center. So maybe some workers who are workers have kept their homes, but mostly they're not that way. So they're not interacting with Russians very often.
The city's basically radically changed from where it was last year, or the years before that. There's been a lot more vegan areas. At least that's one thing I've noticed is there didn't really used to be good vegan food anywhere in the city. Now there's multiple places where you can find decent vegan food. There's a lot more venues for concerts and shows, not just metal, but like all forms of music. which was something we desperately needed at all points in time. But now it's kind of getting better slowly.
Are they all Russian owned?
No, there's not all Russian owned, but there is a significant part that are Russian owned. However, with the influx of Russian capital, a lot of Russian Georgian owned stuff has also opened up. And while I still see there's still some difficulty integrating a bunch of people who, well, it was a lot harder this time last year because a lot of Russians came here under the assumption that they would be here for a few months, and then they would get to move back to their country without, because the war would be over and they just move back. But now that the reality of the fact that this war is going to last for a lot longer than anyone ever suspected, a lot of people are slowly starting to acclimatize and get used to the local culture and customs and learning the language and integrating Georgian, not just Georgian people, but Georgian styles of general life into their daily routines. Well, as far as you can be respectful to a culture as conservative as Georgian, though on the other hand, we've never really been outwardly negative towards any people in our country. But while it has spiked a certain level of Russophobia in the country, it's still not as bad as Russian state media wants to make it out. We're not actively killing Russians on the street or even attacking Russians on the street. Sure, there's a fight there once or twice, but nothing on an actual organized scale, at least from what I've heard and from what people have told me.
Anti-Russian sentiment is evident almost everywhere except the punk scene. Part of the reason is that punks who run venues do all they can to include Georgian bands and empower young Georgian artists. Despite the well-intentions, Georgians still face the economic repercussions.
So in economical point of view, it's not very good, because in long terms. But now it's good because economic is on the rise. And for me, as a musician, I have a concert where a lot of people are coming, and even from some concerts, income is very good, because before it was totally not real that from a punk concert we could have some income, maybe some couple of laris just to get some booze and drink after the show. That was there is very popular dish which is called acharuli khachapuri, Ajarian khachapuri, which is kind of cheese boat we call. And the main cheese for this dish is from Imereti, a region of Georgia where I live now. And after so many Russians came, the demand for this khachapuri, of course, raised up, and all the cheese was taken out to produce more and more khachapuri. And someday in my village we could not find cheese to buy because all cheese was gone. And this is just one simple example, what I say. And of course, price for the cheese raised up.
I didn't have too many orders for mixing, so I had to do something else, and I tried to teach vocals for a while, do other stuff, and then I just understood that there is a shortage of practice spaces in Tbilisi actually, and there's like overwhelming amount of musicians, also like Russian, Ukrainian, Belarusian musicians who came here after war started. They all need a place to practice, and also like many of them came from cool cities, Moscow, Petersburg, Kiev. Like they have great practice spaces there, like just world class. So and they were very used to hearing like good sound, having good sound in the studio. So I thought, okay, so I have a decent backline with me that I brought. I have to buy some stuff, and then I'll basically open the best one in the city. Not because it's that great, but it's just other ones are worse, you know. That's then I started searching for a spot. It's not really easy to find it in Tbilisi because like it's this city never had like factories. Like in Russia, we have like some closed factories, usually in the middle of the city. Then we have some old Soviet administrative buildings, huge ones, and then also like these garage complexes that were like there's 1,000 garages in one area. And people will usually, that's like very typical spot for a practice space. Usually you rent something in the closed factory or in the garage or something, but Tbilisi doesn't have anything like that. They have like all the factories they used to have are way in the outskirts, so it's like not very commercially viable. Like you have to be in the center for everybody to, so yeah, next to metro, so everybody can come to your spot. So ended up finding this. And, it had a leaky wall, like rainwater was coming through the wall, so a bunch of stuff had to be done to this place, and had to borrow some money from friends and family, but yeah, well, it's working good enough for now. So it seems like by the end of the year I'll be debt-free again.
Ну, как бы мы изначально и планировали создавать некое интернациональное, что ли, место, ну, как бы для всех, вот, и, ну, у нас постоянно играют грузинские исполнители, вот, и, ну, да, к нам ходят местные ребята на концерты, вот, и мы стараемся максимально, насколько это возможно, интегрироваться, вот, в местную культуру и как-то, ну, не знаю, может, приносить какое-то свое видение и получать ну, впитывать опыт, соответственно, местных ребят и впитывать какую-то местную культуру для того, чтобы создавать что-то новое. И, ну, да, собственно, я считаю, что, ну, мне кажется, мы взаимодействуем с местными и стремимся к тому, чтобы к нам ходило их как можно больше.
It really depends on the person. I mean, of course, you're going to find like a minority, I think it's a minority of Georgians who think of that as an invasion of sorts. But I think most Georgians also, maybe half of them, understand that people who choose to leave their country are generally people with like ambition and work ethic and stuff like that, so they will do good. The only bad that happens to the city is partially due to like greed that the locals for sure have. Is all the rental prices, all the rent went up. Just also the prices of property went up. You can, yeah. So you could maybe rent a 2-bedroom apartment 2 years ago for like 600 lari. Now it's like $1,000, maybe more.
Ну, я довольно нейтрально отношусь к таким надписям, потому что такие надписи есть везде, я уверен. В России очень много надписей аналогичного характера, которые пишут люди либо радикально настроенные, либо что-то может быть непонимающее. И тут я соглашусь с ребятами, потому что после того, как ты пообщаешься с человеком лично, его мнение может измениться прямо у тебя на глазах, и он от надписи «Fuck Russia» отойдет и скажет: блин, да, дружище, ты прав. Типа, или вы просто придете к какому-то компромиссу. Поэтому, мало ли что пишут на заборах. В общем, ничего страшного в этом нет. Везде хватает таких людей. Ну, точнее как, это в целом неприятно, но никакой именно такой сильной агрессии со стороны грузин не ощущается. То есть в основном все лояльные и как минимум лояльные, а в основном приветливые.
Я уверен, что фашисты или сочувствующие есть в любой стране. Украина не исключение, как не исключение Европа, Америка, Южная Америка или там Австралия. Это просто некое течение. Мне кажется, люди не знают, на кого свалить свою вину за то, что у них плохо. И обычно это выходит как раз некие измы, фашизмы, национализмы, ксенофобия. То есть кто-то должен быть виноват в том, что у них что-то не получается. Мне кажется, в любой стране мира есть сочувствующие.
Ну, еще хотелось бы добавить, что, наверное, на мой взгляд, именно вот какое-то панк-движение и что-то такое, оно всегда как-то крепло в моменты, когда вокруг тебя происходят наиболее негативные события, вот, потому что, мне кажется, каждому, лично мне важно как-то в такие моменты стараться еще больше противостоять тому, что происходит вокруг. И, конечно, бывают какие-то, было довольно много своих типа трудностей и сложностей, но, во-первых, я всегда понимаю, что, сейчас гораздо большему количеству людей, живется не просто плохо, а ужасно и гораздо хуже. Я всегда стараюсь ценить то, что я имею, и вот в какой-то степени сложившаяся ситуация дает мне, некий импульс и силы вкладываться как можно больше в то, что я могу делать, и в то, что я хочу делать, и как-то стараться вносить какие-то, на наш взгляд, позитивные изменения в окружающую среду исключительно за счет того, что мы любим и можем делать. Вот. И, как уже сказал Ник, не факт, что для меня жизнь в России всегда всегда проходила в определенном напряжении. Вот, и, ну, в общем, не могу сказать, что те трудности, с которыми я столкнулся здесь, может быть, они в каких-то местах были труднее, мне было труднее через них переступить, но у меня было больше сил, чтобы им противостоять. Как-то так.
Ну да, то есть пан-комьюнити это вообще какая-то вот основа вообще того, ну, чем мы занимались и раньше, чем мы занимаемся здесь. То есть это как раз позволяет, ну, то есть я не представляю, чем бы я бы занимался бы и здесь, да и в России, если бы я не был бы частью этого комьюнити. То есть мне кажется, что людям, которые не относятся к нему, допустим, и также приехали сюда вынужденно, скажем так, им гораздо сложнее было бы, устроиться, вот, потому что все равно, так или иначе, это связи какие-то, и здесь, как и, в принципе, почти, в любой стране уже с самого начала можно найти каких-то людей, которые близки тебе как-то по духу и так далее, вот, и, это сильно, особенно на начальных этапах как-то помогало освоиться, то есть даже несмотря на то, что мы практически никто из нас не знает там грузинский язык, но тем не менее как-то ты понимаешь, что ты можешь найти общий язык в таком, не в буквальном смысле, а скорее в каком-то таком метафорическом, с людьми, которые тебя как бы, поймут, с которыми у тебя много общего, вот, вне зависимости от того, где эти люди находятся, да, и в какой стране, на каком языке они говорят и так далее. И это, да, это действительно очень важная часть, моей жизни конкретно, я думаю, и так или иначе всех людей, которые участвуют в нашем проекте.
First of all, because we are punks and we are not Nazis, and we know that in every nation there are assholes and good people, and punks are we are same ideology, as you know, and we are against Putin, they are against Putin, we are against authoritarianism, they are against authoritarianism, and so on, and they play punk rock, we play punk rock, and we play songs, they slam on our music, they play songs, we slam on their music, and like the punk unity, and that's why. There are tensions, of course, but I can't say it on the nationality, because of nationality.
Сложный вопрос. Я нашел здесь прям уникальное, что, в общем, то, что здесь все друг друга знают еще. То есть все музыканты, они, которые даже не то, что панк, а вообще из рок-сцены, как будто знают друг друга через, там, может, одно рукопожатие. Лично как будто все друг друга знают. И это очень похоже на ситуацию в моей родной республике, когда все друг друга знают. И как-то... И в целом все влияют друг на друга. То есть одни что-то начинают делать, и это заставляет других тоже что-то менять. И как-то Если кто-то сделал что-то крутое, то другие тоже могут начать меняться очень быстро и подстраиваться под новые какие-то штуки.
every time I go to Secret Place, I feel like I went from somewhere I wasn't supposed to be to home. It's one of the most comfortable places I've ever been in, and the people there have been nothing but wonderful to me, and to basically everyone I know and who's been there have said the same thing. And other than that, even on different concerts, the community has become much more, the punk community that is, has become much more united, much more politically aware as well. A big chunk of the, again, I can't really tie this to just Russians. However, they did really help us out by providing us a area to play in, to get the political messages across, which just recently started, honestly, because before that, punk didn't really used to be political in Georgia.
For sure, like every other show or every show is a benefit show. Like they also like always give money, and they run charities of whatever. They volunteer. They work with refugees and stuff. Also, punk activists are like some of them, like Ksenia I just met. Like she is very like prominent in like animal rights community here. Like she tries to help stray cats and such who are like just running the city. Like you see how many dogs you have here. Dogs are everywhere, cats are everywhere, and Georgians, as hospitable and wonderful they are, they like really don't seem to care that much for like every Georgian household seems to like, we need to have a dog and a cat, and they have like, if they have a house, then they'll just run everywhere and like mate with whatever they find. So it's just, yeah, it's everything everywhere. So I think there are like certain values that Russian like left activists and like punks and widely say they promote here, and for the good, sure.
Ну, я стараюсь. Меня больше интересуют на самом деле шоу, которые местные группы здесь играют. Ну, как-то, не знаю, более интереснее, потому что российские группы я и так, в принципе, много видел, слышал, так что мне больше интересно то, что здесь делают как бы местные. Ну, в принципе, да, я завел какие-то знакомства, и, в принципе, я как-то чувствую себя вовлеченным в это, и чувствую то, что иногда меня допускают даже до каких-то вещей, до которых, может, других не особо допустили бы, не знаю. И как-то Ну, мне нравится, в общем, как-то помогать, как-то, опять же, это похоже. Ну, мне всегда нравились такие вот темы, когда люди сами что-то делают, и, ну, не знаю, способствовать этому, быть частью этого тоже мне важно. А что до групп из России, большинство из них я знаю, в принципе, и людей, которые там играют, я тоже знаю. И я тоже посещаю много концертов. Вот в Плейсе, допустим, те же самые, почти все концерты посещаю. И стараюсь все снимать.
Luba, Nick, and other guys from Belgrade also, they like engaged together and decided to open some bar or club, just as one place where we could, you know, get together and continue to do what we like, playing music, support each other, promote the idea of the punk rock and all these positive vibes. So yeah, it's a long story. I mean, because nobody would just come to other country and start opening a club or bar, which will become a point of attraction for the whole punk scene, which any can become a member of. So coming back to your question, right? It all just was already here. So the guys opened this club around a year ago. We celebrated the first year anniversary recently of the Secret Place. So since then, I think for all people from St. Pete or Moscow, any Russian city, it was not already a problem to become a part of it, because there was already this fundamental thing. Everybody are connected with the same problems, because everybody are out of money, out of like mental stability and protection, and somebody doesn't have even work. So what it means, you just have to survive somehow, you have to stick together. You may still have an opportunity to do what you like and see people who are close to you. And so speaking about this punk community, it's like it's all about such moments when first people come, start to open some places, organize some activities, and then other people come and they join them, and then becomes bigger and bigger and more confident and more solid. And this way, in Tbilisi, in Georgia, this movement is really arising and becoming.
In Georgia, Russian punks found a place to continue doing what they love with like-minded people. It's a testament to the power of punk to foster solidarity despite the hardships foisted on us from the outside.